Welcome to this special edition of the Carolina Weather Group, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte, North Carolina. Below me on the screen, I've got Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina. We got Brad Panovich from WCNC in Charlotte. We got Jason Boyer from WLOS in Asheville. And coming up this hour, we're going to hear from Greg Fishel in Raleigh. We're going to hear from Tim Buckley in Greensboro. We're going to hear from Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach because we are going to make our way around the Carolinas talking about this big winter storm that is coming our way. So stay tuned. We'll be taking your questions. We'll be trying to hit your neighborhoods and talking about localized impacts that these guys know best. But let's start in Columbia, South Carolina with our own Frank Strait, who's going to give us kind of a big picture overview of this big epic storm that's on its way.
Yep, and I suppose I should start by sharing screens so that you can actually see what I'm talking about. So there we go, James. You should be able to access my screen share now, and you can see a satellite picture across the U.S., which is showing, some clouds already streaming into the Carolinas. That's not from our upcoming storm this weekend. It's actually ahead of a front that's moving our way, actually sort of a 1-2 punch of fronts. There's one that's lined up roughly through Michigan, across the Ohio Valley, into the Tennessee Valley, and southwestward into South Texas. Second front coming in behind it, and it shows up a little bit better in the clouds. You can see a little faint line of clouds here across Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas that's moving southeast. There's some really cold air behind that, by the way. It's sub-zero up along the Canadian border right now. The storm that we'll be dealing with this weekend is actually this thing that's back here off the California coast right now. Now, the idea here is that over the next 24 hours, the two fronts kind of merge and become one as the first front eventually catches up, or the second front back here catches up to the first one. And we'll see some rain being generated across the Carolinas. Not a ton of it, but some rain. You can see the composite radar imagery right now showing that we have a band of rain moving in, kind of falling apart as it does, but some light rain already getting underway over western North Carolina and moving into upstate South Carolina. It shifts slowly southward over the next couple of days as those two fronts move through. Then we have cold air moving in at the same time as that storm moves our way from the west. And there are some disagreements in the models as to how this is going to work out. The GFS has a colder and somewhat further south solution with this storm moving our way, resulting in more in the way of frozen precipitation down to South Carolina. It looks like North Carolina is definitely going to get a winter storm here, at least most of the state. South Carolina, maybe not as much, although northern half of the state likely will see some impacts at least. But the GFS much colder, showing maybe some snow at the onset in some places, especially across North Carolina, but mostly sleet. And then to some freezing rain before the storm moves away early on Monday. Other models showing something a little bit different. The European model, for example, is advanced further out here to show you what the Euro has, with the precipitation breaking out there at in the evening on Saturday, and showing it mostly freezing rain. The warm nose being large and in charge here, showing freezing rain occurring across much of the western Carolinas and eventually warming it up. It's just plain rain. And even on Sunday, could even be some thunderstorms if the European's right, because it warms things up. It has surface temperatures across the Carolina coastal plain going to the 65 to 70 range, whereas the GFS, for example, has it much colder. So big difference in the models here, and the truth is somewhere in between, and that's the challenge for us forecasters to figure out. But anyway, it shows the storm moving out. Behind it, much colder air settles in. It looks like Monday morning and Tuesday morning especially could be some pretty cold mornings here across the Carolinas in the wake of this storm. James?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's going to be one of the big things that everyone we talk to tonight is going to be hitting on is prepare for a winter storm and then prepare for prolonged power outages and freezing temperatures on the other side of this thing, because it is going to be sticking around for quite some time. Thank you for that, Frank. Coming up here on the Carolina Weather Group tonight, we're going to take you around the region, and we're going to start in Asheville. Our friend Jason Boyer, Chief Meteorologist at WLOS, joins us now on the Carolina Weather Group. Jason, we got to bring you back one of these times for good news, because it feels like Western North Carolina could be in for another big storm here. What are you looking like in your localized region?
Yeah, we're dealing with the same kind of headache that everybody else is dealing with. What type of winter weather will be the dominant winter weather is the big question here. And of course, microclimates play a huge role in any kind of situation. You throw in the complexities that we're dealing with all the different types of energy flying around, and it will certainly become problematic. Now, I'll tilt this down a little bit. You'll see that I'm really hammering home the impacts and what people can expect. We think freezing rain is going to have a high impact for our area at this point. Sleet is going to be mixed in, could be several hours of sleet in some cases. The snow is actually a lowering impact for us as we've seen model run after model run really start to chip away at the snow totals and bring those ice totals more on the higher side. And of course, power travel impacts pretty high at this point for us here in Western North Carolina. Also been talking about that track and where the main energy goes. If it's farther inland, we get a little more mixed terrain possibilities west. And of course, we're looking at the icier scenario right now with that system diving a little farther south of our area and staying there, and thus locking in some colder air. So a lot to talk about, and showing all the different precip modes that you guys have been doing as well, and how much ice could accumulate. Obviously, we've been also talking about the weight of that ice. You know, it makes a huge difference between a quarter inch and you get above that to a half inch or more, and you're talking some possible catastrophic consequences with the weight of that ice, bringing branches down, maybe even trees. We also have the carryover effects from Helene back in September 2024. I mean, we still have trees that are weakened by Helene, and years later, almost, we're still talking about that. And that could play into this too. You put more weight on these trees, and they could certainly come down more easily in this situation. So that's certainly what we're focused on, urging people to stay home this weekend. If you don't have to travel, just do not, and ride this out.
Jason, that was definitely going to be one of my questions, because of all the regions we're talking to tonight, you guys were hit hardest by the impacts of Helene, which are still being felt across your region. So is there anything in particular that could play an extra hazard that is on the ground now that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been on the ground for previous winter storms?
Well, we lost a lot of vegetation too around these stream beds and creek beds. So there is more likelihood that you're going to get glazing on rocks, and certainly the potential for roadways to maybe get glazed over faster as well. Our soil temperatures have been dropping too recently because of the cold air locked in. But because of Helene, you also have to think about there's less shade in some of these roads, on some of these roads, I should say. And that might actually help in the long run if we can get some sun to work down onto these road surfaces. It might actually be a benefit, but overall, we're still expecting pretty big impacts.
Now, your market is real interesting, your TV market there. You have Western North Carolina, the Asheville area, but you also do the upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg. What are the differences that we can expect between those two areas?
Yeah, it looks like the Euro wants to make that line of differentiation between snow and ice somewhere north of I-85, maybe even north of I-40, really. And the GFS, as Frank mentioned, the colder solution is trying to bring the ice line farther south, maybe even south of I-85. We certainly think the upstate is going to experience winter type weather. It's just a matter of how much can we squeeze as freezing rain on them, maybe sleet mixed in at times. And there's even the possibility that there's that warm nose that comes in later in the model run, and certainly in the storm, that could change it over to rain for some places in the upstate. So they're going to get a mixed bag, and obviously could have some major effects too if that comes to fruition.
That dreaded warm nose. Jason, have you put out a forecast map yet for ice or snow? Or if not, when can people expect to see that from you?
Well, I have been showing more of the European data at this point, and we also have the capability of showing KML files. If you're not familiar with that, that's coming from the WPC, the Weather Prediction Center, showing the impacts of or a likelihood of accumulating or accretion of 1/10 of an inch of ice, a 1/4 inch of an inch of ice or more. And that's kind of where we're playing it right now, showing those scenarios and possibilities. In terms of actually getting down into exact amounts and putting them in different regions and microclimates, if you will, of our area, haven't gotten to that point, but we're certainly looking at it probably within the next 24 hours.
All right. Lots of storm coverage to come. Where can people find you, Jason?
Of course, we're online. WLOS.com is where our main station page is, and I'm online, Facebook, Jason Boyer WX. or Jason Boyer WLOS. That's the way to find me.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time. We're going to try to keep this show moving real tight tonight with everyone. I'm sure we could talk to everyone for like an hour. So I hope people check you out there at WLOS, Jason. I hope you guys stay safe, stay warm, and I hope our audience stays tuned as we continue to make our way around the region.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Let's make our way over to Raleigh now here on our Carolina Weather Group round robin as we continue to prepare for the upcoming winter storm impacts. Greg Fishel is with us right now from Raleigh. And Greg, you guys look like you're going to get in on this winter storm action too. What are you forecasting for the Triangle region?
I actually am thinking at this point that the cold air may be deep enough, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 feet thick, that we could get primarily sleet here tomorrow night. And then the question for Sunday, which now appears to be the heavier hitting day, looks like the cold air may get shallow enough so that it becomes more of a freezing rain threat. But those are pretty subtle differences in terms of the depth of the cold air, but they could have major impacts in terms of the the number of power outages. And it looks like there's going to be a wide region that's experiencing this, because you look at the warm nose aloft, it goes all the way up into Virginia. And the surface freezing line may be down toward the coast. So it looks like an immense amount of real estate that could be dealing with sleet and freezing rain for, at least the second part of the weekend.
Let me ask you, Greg, because I have a feeling we're going to keep hearing it. And for our audience who hasn't heard the term in a while, can you explain that warm nose situation to us?
Well, and if I could make a little bit of a commentary here, if you'll allow me, I heard a stat earlier this year that we were fourth in numerical weather prediction behind the European, the UK Met, and the Canadian. And I must tell you that this week was an embarrassing week for the GFS and its ensembles. The GFS had no clue earlier in the week that the warm nose was even an issue, and the European was much quicker on that. The timing on the onset of the precipitation, the European never had it coming in before late Saturday. The GFS had it coming in around sunrise. Now it's adjusted to that. And this is a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you. We've got some great minds in this country, and I think we should be able to do better than being fourth in the world in terms of accuracy. But basically, to answer your question, the warm nose is simply warm air aloft that is riding over top of that cold dome. And in this particular case, it's really high up. It's up and around, 6,000, 7,000 feet. And the problem is then you have the snow falling into that layer and it melts. And then the question is there enough cold air near the ground for it to refreeze, or does it just freeze on contact? And that's really going to be the issue that we'll be addressing here once we get a little bit closer to time.
Let me ask you about the models, because, we're coming off that last weekend bust where the models thought we were going to have something. We didn't have anything. And now there's some skepticism from folks who were remembering just 3 or 4 days ago. What is your level of confidence, Greg, on what the models are putting out tonight on this Wednesday for something that's allegedly going to happen starting Saturday?
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me anyways that, there's going to be a significant precipitation event. And the big question right now is where do these various boundaries set up? The thing I worry about, to be perfectly honest with you, is there are a lot of people on social media and YouTube, and I don't know what their educational backgrounds are or anything else, but they are showing deterministic model solutions 120 hours, 144 hours, 200 hours out. And it's displayed as if it's gospel. And a lot of the public looks at that and believes it and accepts it and goes into a panic mode. And so I had people coming up to me Monday all day long saying, are we really going to get 18 inches? And I said, hey, if it looks this good 5 days out, what do you think the chances are of it actually being that good when time comes to verify? So, we know the GFS has a cold bias when it comes to this type of thing. And I've seen it happen too many times. And so it's just one of those things where I think you have to be cautious. You have to be honest with people and say there's uncertainty. Nothing is etched in stone. And we've got to wait till we're closer to time to be able to diagnose it.
At a risk of getting an eye roll from anyone who's watching tonight, you've, of course, seen this photo time and time and time again. So there's no one better to ask than you. Is this going to happen again in Raleigh this weekend, or have we improved ourselves since then?
Well, I think that the thing about that day was that it started around lunch hour, and a lot of people were at work and they were they started to panic and got out on the roads and just, made a bad situation even worse. I guess the nice thing about this one is that it's coming in over the weekend, but the impacts could obviously linger into the early part of the week in terms of, school closings and business closings and church closings and all that kind of stuff. So, but I remember we also had, and you may remember this, the gridlock day where we had 0.7 inches of snow and basically human activity, everybody panicking, getting out on the roads, turned an innocent powdery snow into a sheet of glass. And so people, it was taking 8 hours to get home from work. There were students and teachers trapped at schools. And we were the laughing stock because all they could hear is 0.7 inches of snow and Raleigh can't handle it. But that was a very unique situation. I talked to a modeler at a conference, and he said that the ground had been, it had been below freezing 2 or 3 days in a row. And he said what happens is the pressure from the tires melts the snow, and then it immediately refreezes as a result of the cold ground. So everybody getting out of the road actually took a rather innocent powdery snow and turned it into a cataclysmic event. And I don't know that I'll ever see anything like that again.
I hope we don't. Are you in a position where you're putting out snowfall or ice totals tonight? Or if not, when do you think you'll have your first call map?
I would say tomorrow at the absolute earliest, and considering the fact that we're not going to be starting until probably late Saturday, I may wait until Friday on that. And the thing I always worry about is when you draw those lines to separate the zones, somebody lives on that line, and the chance of that line being in exactly that location is fairly small. And so I always worry about somebody, not benefiting from the line shifting 25 or 30 miles, and all of a sudden a foot of snow turns into an inch of rain or something like that. But I would say that certainly by Friday, we're going to have to make some sort of a commitment because people need to plan and prepare.
I mean, if push comes to shove, you just draw the line right down I-85. That works every time, right?
Well, I get your drift.
Is there anything for your region that is real unique in this setup or in previous winter storms that people should keep in the back of their mind if they're watching tonight from the Triangle?
I would say that the thing that fascinates me about this area is that we are right in the middle of the effects of the mountains in terms of trapping the shallow cold air and the warming effects of the Gulf Stream. And trying to predict how far inland that warming effect will get is immensely difficult. I remember one situation in January, I can't remember the year, but I went on the air at 11 o'clock and it was 61 at the Raleigh-Durham Airport and 33 at Burlington. And they're not that far apart. Now, I don't expect anything like that this time, but nonetheless, there probably will be some warming. In fact, I think it's already been mentioned on here, the Europeans going bonkers with warming along the coast. And it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. But I would say that the biggest question in my mind is if there any part of our area that's going to turn over to completely rain. And I think that would be well south and east of Raleigh. But down around Fayetteville and Clinton, it's going to be a close call.
Yeah, I think the coast is going to be real interesting if anybody can manage to get in on the safe side of this. Greg, I do want to let you know that we got somebody named Renee V715 watching on YouTube tonight. She says, Greg, my favorite weatherman. Miss him here in North Carolina. And then she says, I used to get all my weather from Greg, but she can still get her weather from Greg, right? Where can she find you now?
Yes, I have a Patreon channel. If you go to patreon.com/fishweather, you can sign up. It's $3 a month, so it's not a budget breaker. And people tell me, what do you do on there? And I said, the same thing I did on TV, but I don't have somebody telling me to shut up after 3 minutes.
Yeah, we don't normally keep people to also such a tight time frame tonight, except for when we're trying to book 12 people at a time.
Right.
Before we let you go, Frank Strait on our panel here in Columbia, I think had a comment for you, Frank.
Yeah, just was looking at the surface temperatures up there and during Sunday night or rather Saturday night into Sunday morning, and I think you have a chance of being right there that you could end up seeing sleet, not just because the cold air could be deep enough, but also because of how cold it'll be. It looks like your low-level temperatures are somewhere around -7 or 8 Celsius. That's the low 20s Fahrenheit. So that's the other thing that matters when you're talking about sleet versus freezing rain, is how deep that layer of cold air is near the surface, but also how cold it is. You usually want that 3,000 feet deep to get sleet instead of freezing rain. It may not be quite that deep, but because it's so cold, you may end up with sleet anyway. At least I hope so, because you could, with it being that cold, if it ends up being freezing rain, it would pretty efficiently accrete on surfaces being that cold if you didn't get sleet. So that's I hope that the sleet situation bails you out up there.
Well, we had a 5-inch sleet storm here in February of '87, and the liquid equivalent was about 1.8, and so you can imagine how dense that sleet was.
Oh yeah, I've seen that before growing up in Rock Hill. I don't want to go to a full-on story time with Frank here, James, but we had like a 4 to 5 inch snowstorm, or rather a sleet storm in Rock Hill when I was a kid. The sledding was just outstanding with that.
I bet
it was great.
We have a whole special open for story time, and Frank, it's a whole thing. You'll have to come back for it.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention to Greg, you get the Shirt of the Night award. That's a great shirt. I love it.
I think I bought that in Clearwater, Florida when I was down there. So.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
All right. Well, Greg, stay safe, stay warm. I hope people find you over there on Patreon, and I hope people stay tuned tonight as we continue to do our round robin around the Carolinas.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime. Come back on a night where there's less chaotic weather, and I want to hear more. I want to hear story time with Greg.
Okay.
All right. Fabulous. Thanks, guys. All right. Let's make our way here to the Queen City. Our pal Brad Panovich is standing by here on the Carolina Weather Group with a look at what we can expect with this winter storm this weekend, Brad.
Yeah, kind of doing what everybody else is doing. And
panic buying?
What's that?
Panic buying?
I think that I will say this. I really commiserate with Greg's rant about all these long-range snowfall forecasts, because it really has given people a pretty bad perspective, expecting a whole bunch of snow, right? And so we've been talking about a mix, and we've been trending towards ice, and all you hear is like, oh, we're getting snow this week. It's frustrating because
I can bring Greg back in. We can continue the rant.
That could be a whole show. But to make Greg and Jason's point, I'm having trouble finding snow at all. Like, could we see 10% of this be some flakes at the beginning, some wet flakes here and there? To me, I fully believe what Greg just said. I think sleet is one of the most predominant things we're going to see with this storm, and then finishing with freezing rain at the end. It was funny, Greg said about that 4 to 5 inch sleet storm. I just glanced at the GFS, and yeah, I'm not a fan of the GFS, but at least it breaks out sleet as a separate product. And it actually shows a swath of 3 to 4 inches of sleet from the upstate up to Raleigh through Charlotte. That's a lot of sleet. And then you throw some freezing rain on top of that. Boy, that would be just horrendous for the road. So if I were to tell people, in the Charlotte area, most of the Carolinas, you really need to prepare for two things. One is a lot of bad travel. Like, I'm still getting questions about, hey, can I do this Saturday night? Can I do this Sunday? I mean, everyone's trying to find this like hour window or something, or try to figure out the storm and get ahead of it. I would just say, don't plan on traveling, because it is not worth it, in my opinion. The other thing is power outages. If this becomes full on freezing rain, then you're talking about significant icing of 1/4 to 1/2 inch. So, if you had to tell me tonight, like, Brad, I need a total, I'm not ready really to do that, but I would say several inches of sleet and 1/4, 1/2 inch of ice probably is what I would plan for from an impact standpoint. I told James I've been kind of playing with, maybe I should put a map out tonight, but
yeah, I was hoping you'd have a map right now, but that's okay.
Well, I'm not totally ready for that yet, but
that's part of the trust, right? You don't want to come out too early with something too preliminary.
Yeah, because, and here's the thing, and people's like, well, why don't you commit to something? The problem is people tend to believe the first thing they see. They don't look at the revisions. So I'm very careful about that first map, because that first number is something that will stick with people throughout the storm. And they may never go back and see the updates to it. So I want that first number to be as good as I possibly can. Even if I have to adjust a little bit, at least it'll be close to that first number. So people have an idea. And just like Jason talked about, we've really been hitting primarily at impacts. So I think that's kind of the way you have to do these things. You should focus completely on the impacts. And I'm going to share my screen real quickly and kind of show you for the Charlotte area. This is kind of what we're thinking right now. I don't know why that's so off
That's
center.
my fault. Hang on. Here we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So regardless of how much falls, this is kind of the timing and impact. We're going to see that potential freezing rain, hazardous travel, and power outages starting late Saturday through Sunday and possibly Monday morning. I'm looking at our chat from YouTube, Facebook, and I'm seeing a lot of questions about Monday. Here's the thing, even if everything ends Sunday night, it's not like it's falling out Monday morning. I would anticipate big travel issues through Monday. And for a good reason, the winter storm watch is up through 1 p.m. on Monday. So that kind of tells you we expect impacts to last through at least the middle of the day on Monday. So I would plan for this to be an all weekend and then early Monday event. And then next week, I'm sure you guys will talk about this when I'm gone, but the cold air behind this is a big part of this story that I don't think people even realize, and probably why we're more worried about those power outages, because if there are power outages and no heat, the temperatures behind this are going to be very, very dangerous for a lot of people, with single digits and teens for several nights in a row and afternoon highs struggling to get above freezing. People will have a tough time keeping their home warm without a heating source.
Yeah, we're going to talk to Duke Energy in a few minutes about ways to prepare as they get their grid ready and you get yourself ready at home. Brad, once that sun goes down on Saturday night and we hit that freezing mark and we go down below freezing, when do you think Charlotte comes back above freezing? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
Well, if the Euro freaks out and keeps pushing warm air, we might jump close to freezing some point Sunday. But even if that happens, it looks like then the bottom drops out as the system moves away. But let's say we stay below freezing as a consensus, it probably would be Tuesday afternoon, probably at the earliest, that we're back above freezing. And then just some really cold nights ahead. So pretty long stretch of weather. And the other thing that I think goes without saying, but probably people don't realize, these are storms we used to get a lot more frequently in the Carolinas. It's been a while. And so a lot of people have forgotten how to prepare and act. I mean, just in the last 5 years, we had our first 2 snowless winters in 147 years of record keeping. So for some folks, they've never really seen a storm like this because they moved to Charlotte in the last 5 to 10 years. And our last big storm was back in, 2018, maybe 2016. And then you get back 2015, maybe a bigger ice storm. So, it's almost been a decade for a lot of folks since we've seen a storm this impactful here in the Carolinas.
Yeah, Brad, you were telling us about that at work. In the last minute or two, we got you. Last time we had a big winter storm in the Charlotte area and we were without power for several days. I mean, you saw everyday impacts of people trying to navigate that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things about power outages, I work a lot with our Charlotte Mecklenburg Emergency Management, and their biggest fear always in any event is extended power outages, because we are so reliant on energy for heating, for medical devices. They worry about that, whether it's storm related, cybersecurity related, a hack on the grid, or grid issues, solar storms. Power being out for a large population like Charlotte will cause a lot of chaos and problems long term. So that's one of those things they worry about more than anything. And I think it's something people take for granted because you have power. Try going without power for a couple of days and realize how hard it is. Imagine that for like over 1 million people or 1.7 million people in a metro. That would be really problematic.
All right, before we let you go, Sam Walker and our Carolina Weather Group panel out there on the Outer Banks has a question for you.
Yeah, Brad. Hey, Brad. This system itself is going to have wide-ranging impacts, not just in the Carolinas, but all up and down the East Coast into the deep South. If we get the ice storm of ice storms in Charlotte, you're talking about extended power outages. This is going to have a major impact on air travel across the country. And talk more about what Charlotte Douglas is ready for, not ready for, has dealt with in the past in terms of systems like this.
Yeah, so, Charlotte Douglas is the big American hub. We've got several of them. We've got DFW, you've got Pittsburgh, you've got Phoenix, you've got Miami. But when you have one of the hubs of a big airline like this, it's going to have trickle-down effects across the entire country. The other thing is we do have some snow and ice removal here in Charlotte. They do have a pretty good program for their runways, but de-icing of planes and stuff like that, it just takes longer here because it's not something that's built into the airport's infrastructure. So I've been saying this all week, Sam. I mean, people are like asking about flights in Charlotte. Think about if you're flying anywhere in the United States with all these major airports being impacted, Charlotte, Dallas, Nashville, Memphis, maybe even some other smaller airports in the Mid-South. Those trickle-down effects from the airlines will affect people even outside of the storm that aren't even getting snow or ice. So I think air travel will be affected pretty significantly. And what airlines typically do, Sam, they don't like to keep their planes in the path of these storms. They move them to a part of the country where they can use them. And so sometimes they will move them to another airport and there won't be any planes here to take off and land because they get them out of the way of the storm.
Yeah. And if you look at the maps, going up the Northeast, Philadelphia, Boston, I mean, so this is going to have not just the deep South and the mid-Atlantic. This is the entire eastern half of the United States is going to have impacts on air travel, not just ground travel, power, all that stuff. So this could trickle into next week if we're talking about, sub-freezing temperatures for 3 or 4 days.
Well, and an underrated part of the air travel thing, we think about people, but a lot of cargo travels by air too. So think about FedEx, UPS, and Amazon. People are used to getting those things in 2 days, Sam.
Yep.
You're not going to get things in 2 days if all those airports are having travel issues and they can't move that stuff around. So if you're ordering stuff online or you are used to getting something in 2 days, like groceries or pharmacy, fills for prescriptions, you might have issues because a lot of that will be impacted. And the longer it goes on, the bigger the problem becomes because it trickles down to all these other parts of the, as we learned during COVID, the supply chain it becomes impacted, and then you have issues across the board.
I pulled a Scotty, which is Carolina Weather Group slang for forgetting to unmute myself. Chase watching on Facebook says, I have a family trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee on Friday morning for the week. Would canceling be a smart idea? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brad, but I'm going to guess you're going to say either get there Friday and hunker down, or it's the getting home that's going to be the problem. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to get iced in or snowed in there, that's fine. Get there before. Just don't count on leaving for a while. I think the big thing is you can travel before the storm, but once you get to that location, you might plan for being there for a while and not moving around.
Welcome to coming to the Outer Banks during hurricane season, folks. What we deal with all the time, y'all are dealing with this time.
It is kind of like preparing for a hurricane. Brad, I know the answer to this question, but for anyone who doesn't, where can they find your storm coverage over the next few days?
All right. The best way is my station website or app, WCNC.com, our WCNC Plus app, where we're streaming a lot. That's a great resource because you can watch us anywhere in the country. And then obviously on social media, WX Brad, I'm active on all of the platforms. Doesn't matter which platform you're on, I'm posting updates there. And I try to do that on purpose because a lot of people aren't normal consumers of news. They get their news from their social media feeds. And this is such an important storm. I try to put it on platforms that maybe you aren't used to getting news from, like TikTok or Blue Sky or other locations. We will be putting information on all those platforms so you're ready for the storm.
Yeah, lots of streaming over there on WCNC Plus, and we'll be hearing from your colleague Tim Buckley coming up in a few minutes. So hopefully people check you out there, Brad, and hopefully people stay tuned as we continue to make our way around the Carolinas here on this extended edition of the Carolina Weather Group.
Yes, send coffee, please.
So I will pick up some coffee. Good idea. All right, thanks, Brad.
We'll still make no dose.
All right. Coming up here in the Carolina Weather Group, we're going to talk to Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach. We're going to talk to Tim Buckley in the Greensboro area. We're going to talk a little bit about the coast, but we're going to pause our road trip around the Carolinas, and we're going to bring in Jeff Brooks from Duke Energy, one of the biggest power companies, of course, in the region. And we'll be talking to lots of power companies over the course of the next few days. But Jeff, it's only Wednesday night, but now's the time to prepare for this thing, right?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Certainly, we're looking at a monster storm coming, as you've all been talking. I was hoping for more snow, but right now the ice is not looking so good on the forecast. And for us, that's really the most important question. We're looking at that dividing line between snow and ice, and it takes about 6 to 8 inches of snow before you start seeing tree limbs coming down onto power lines. but it only takes 1/4 of an inch of ice. And that's what we typically get a lot of here. And so unfortunately, that's not a good recipe for our outage predictions. We do expect to see some significant impacts potentially here in the Carolinas. So you're right. If you're going to make preparations, now's the time to be thinking about it. We've been making preparations for a while. We're getting ready. You always should have a plan in place. And, if you think about winter storms, if you rely on electricity for medical needs, for say, or other types of things, you're going to probably be stuck in your home for a little while. And so you need to have a plan for where you would go if you lost power for a while. And even for everybody else, how are you going to maintain, contact to your mobile phones? If you have a generator, is that ready to go? Do you have all the things? And we do this every storm. And I know that some people probably are right there every storm. They're doing all their stuff. But a lot of us, it's easy to get kind of complacent and say, I live in a big city, or I live, near all the resources. It's not going to be a problem. But the reality is, if we have a big outage, if we see a lot of ice, it will feel very isolated real quick. And so I think those are some things that people can be thinking about to prepare. And like I said, we're preparing. We've got all of our crews across the state on alert, the thousands of line and tree workers, and we're looking at potential resources that we could bring into the area. So just a lot going on, but now is the time. I was just at the store myself earlier picking up supplies for my work this week. So do yourself a favor and jump on it.
Yeah, I want to talk to you some more about what people can do themselves at home, but let's start with what you guys are doing on the power company standpoint. What do you guys do days in advance to prepare for a big storm like this?
Well, I think when you think about how to prepare for a storm, first of all, it starts months and years ahead. We've been making tons of upgrades to the electric grid, making it stronger, upgrading poles and wires so they can better withstand these types of conditions. One of the biggest things we've been adding is self-healing technology. And that's been a game changer for us. We've got close to 700,000 people in the greater Charlotte area, almost 3 million, I think, across all of the Carolinas. Maybe more. And so, when you think about that technology, it automatically detects power outages. It looks to reroute power to other power lines to get power restored. So that's a great tool that's helping our crews out in the field who may still have to fix that damage. But if we can bring some customers back up, as cold as it is, that's going to make a big difference. So this week, we're also looking at, getting our crews ready. We're doing some last, pre-storm tree trimming all over the Carolinas. That's in addition to what we do year round, inventory checks, working on crew rosters. And if we do bring in resources over the next couple of days, we're going to have to, prepare for those, work them into the system, brief them. So just a lot going on. And unfortunately, we get a lot of experience with this in the Carolinas. So we work to get better every day, but we'll be ready when the storm gets here.
Jay is watching with us tonight on YouTube. He says, the most experience I've had with a power outage was just a few hours during a severe weather event in 2020. So I can't imagine the thought of having one for a winter event. What advice could you give Jay or anyone who's watching tonight to prepare themselves for possibly a prolonged outage?
Winter events are a different animal. I can remember as a kid, sitting there in your house and you've got ice on the tree limbs and it's just so quiet. And all of a sudden you hear crack and then the power goes out. And, at that point, you're not going anywhere. So the biggest thing to think about is how can you maintain comfort? If you rely on electricity for medical needs, do you have a plan in place? Because you won't be able to go anywhere else once the storm gets here. What other things do you need to maintain comfort? Keeping that cell phone charged? Do you have your prescriptions? Do you have the ability to feed your family? All those things have to be thought about because I think Brad was saying earlier, we rely so much on electricity for everything that we do. And it's something we don't even think about. But when it's not there, it's amazing how much it changes your perspective. And so this is a type of a storm where you could potentially see outages that do extend multiple days. So are you prepared for a 2 or 3 day outage event? Those are the questions you should ask yourself. Now, we hope that isn't the case, but we always prepare for the worst, and hope for the best.
The safety of your crews out there in the field is of utmost importance. How soon can they go back out? Like, for instance, I know there are parameters when it comes to wind, and when we're worried about a wind event, I assume with ice, there must be some sort of similar process.
Yeah, we do have safety parameters because safety is first and foremost. We want to get our crews safely home back to their families. They're out working 16-hour days in sub-freezing temperatures, and that's not easy. And so we want to make sure we do everything we can. You're right with wind. when it gets above 29 miles per hour. Hurricanes, those are typically where we see that. That may not be as big of an issue here. But when you think about the road conditions, if those are challenged, it's going to slow down our ability to get to certain locations. We have to be safe. When you get in Western North Carolina in particular, you start seeing, situations where sometimes we have to carry equipment in by hand, or we have to use tracked vehicles to be able to get across terrain that is impassable otherwise. So there's a lot that goes into this. I can remember in Helene, we were using helicopters to bring poles into Western North Carolina where we were, near Asheville. And so all of that are tools that we have, resources that we have, and our technology has come so far. It gives us a much better ability using drones and things like that to be able to assess damage. That's just changed the equation for us and helped us get power back faster. But you're right, at the end of the day, it's the human element, and humans are more important to keep safe than, speed. So that's our focus.
What can people do ahead of the storm, Jeff, to sign up, to be in touch, connected to you guys, so they can get information during the storm?
Well, one of the things you can do right now is download the Duke Energy app. That's a great way, number one, to report an outage if you get one. You can also access our outage maps online. But one of the things I encourage people to do is log into your Duke Energy account and check your contact information. Do we have your mobile phones right? Do we have your emails right? Because that's where we're going to push information. That's where we're going to send you updates on outage restoration. That's where we're going to send you anything you might need to know to plan. And so this is the time to do that. If you do experience an outage, we do want you to report it. And you can do that easily by texting the word out, O-U-T, to 57801, and that'll get you in the system. You can use the Duke Energy app. You can use our website, or you can call 1-800-POWER-ON. A lot of different ways, but we do want you to do that. We want to stay connected with you, and we've really worked to improve that communication because we know how important communication is when you're faced with a possibility of an extended outage.
Jeff, a question from YouTube. Somebody is asking, does it help to unplug unnecessary items?
That's a great question. When you do have an outage, we have in the wintertime what we call, the technical term is cold load pickup. And that means that we have to be very deliberate and careful as we bring power lines back up, because of the cold weather has really changed the way the physics work on the line. And so, unplugging some things, number one, helps when we're bringing everything back up, turning off any switches that were on when the power went out. But it also helps to reduce the risk of any potential issues with your own system as it comes back up. So that's always a good idea. And it's really easy to do. You can turn power strips off. You can flip light switches off. You don't have to do that, but it certainly does help us in the process.
All right. Sam Walker on the Outer Banks has a question for you, Jeff. Let's bring Sam in. Here he is.
Hey, Sam.
Jeff, obviously you're not in my service territory. We're not in your service territory. We're Dominion out here, and we are EMCs, electric membership cooperatives. But of course, those are statewide, and there's a relationship that Duke has with those EMCs in terms of the transmission side. How do you prepare for that side of things? We always talk about, the linemen out here trying to fix everybody down to the street level, but there are certain things you guys have to be prepared for when it comes to the big stuff when we get storms like this.
Yeah, we think about it, what we call our retail customers, the people who are Duke Energy customers, but we also serve dozens of municipalities and electric cooperatives across the state as wholesale customers. And each of those utilities has what we call a point of delivery, or multiple points of delivery that are served by our transmission system. So when you see these types of storms, it's amazing to think about the power of ice and of snow. And it can bring down big transmission lines and other things as well. And so we often do have to repair some of those points of delivery. We work really closely with our wholesale customers to make sure they get updates and information. And as we restore power, our methodical way starts with the transmission lines that get those interstates of the grid that get power from power plants to the communities or those utilities. Then we work with our substations, which are the connection points. And then we work on those main power lines, whether they be our retail lines, or we work with the co-ops and they go in and do their repairs. And then the last thing is that line in your neighborhood or to your house. And we often get the question, hey, why didn't you start in my neighborhood? And that's because somewhere on that system farther up, there's an outage that has to be repaired first. So that methodical way helps to make sure we're getting everybody back up as quickly as we can. And that is certainly a factor when we think about our wholesale customers as well as our direct Duke Energy customers.
And I'll tell you this, something I've always shared with our radio listeners out here on the Outer Banks when we've dealt with hurricanes and the power outages, turn your front porch light on, because when the power comes back on, the guys working out on the street see every house on this block or every house on this road, they got power back. And maybe that one doesn't. Turn your front porch light on if the power goes out.
It's a great, easy thing to do. Yeah, for sure. Smart meters now, which help us, but there's nothing better than when you're out with a crew and the power comes back and they can just look down that street and see all the 14 houses that have their lights on. My favorite is when you're out there and you just hear cheers from inside the house. And that's about the best compliment that you can give a line worker. So we appreciate those.
Been there, done that, Hurricane Fran.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We appreciate your time, Jeff. Stay warm, stay safe out there, to your crews as well. And I'm going to go check and make sure all my contact information is correct. Stay in touch with you guys during the storm.
All right. Thanks for having me. Y'all take care.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone's time tonight. I know it's late at night here as we're continuing to stream the special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. Scotty Powell, are you in a position where you could talk to us there in Myrtle Beach?
Yeah, very briefly. I got about 5 minutes before we have to go on air here, so we can talk.
All right. So let's do this. Let's roll the stinger. There it is. So Scotty Powell is on set at WBTW. What can we expect from this winter storm, Scotty?
Yeah, well, I hate that I joined in late because I don't know what the discussion has been like for the GFS and the European model. Really been hard to kind of follow the European model today with just the big change over the last 12 to 24 hours. So here along our area, we're kind of sticking with the GFS for right now. We're talking about a majority of our area seeing some sort of freezing rain, maybe a little bit of sleet moving into the area. Obviously, the further you go inland across the PD back towards Florence into Lumberton, Laurinburg, I think that's where we're going to see the primary bullseye for that freezing rain. But even here across the Grand Strand, we are preparing for that ice out there. And so we're going to be watching the models, and it really is just going to take that storm track, 50 miles one way or the other. 50 miles more inland could bring that warm air in off of the Atlantic and really create just a rainy situation across the Grand Strand back towards the PD. But if that track is a little bit off the coast, 50 miles off the coast, brings in a little bit more colder air, and that's where we run into that potential of seeing some sleet and freezing rain across our area. I don't think we see a lot of snow here. It may onset maybe some brief periods of snow showers, but that should be about it. But our big concern here from Myrtle Beach back towards Florence into North Myrtle, Conway, Laurinburg, Darlington is going to be that freezing rain and sleet mixture, and mainly freezing rain. But it's really been interesting to see the trends over the last 24 hours. It's hard to believe that those cold Arctic high pressures, you get that much warm air to surge into that presence there. So I'm not jumping on that train just yet. I'm staying on the been here, done that train where we always see these fluctuations in models about 3 or 4 days out before a system, and then it kind of levels itself out. It's good to know that the Hurricane Center has just completed the first recon run. So, once we get that data ingested into the models over the next few runs, I think we're really going to have a more concrete idea of what's going to happen. But for us here across the Grand Strand, our biggest time frame to watch is Saturday night into Sunday night, and then things start to get better per se precipitation wise as we get into Monday. But temperatures after this moves through is definitely going to be cold. So whatever does fall is going to be sticking around. And, unfortunately, if we do see those power outages, it may be a while because all of the Carolinas are going to be affected by this. So it's going to be a blitz of trying to get the power back on for both North and South Carolina. So we've been telling people, hey, just prepare for a couple of days of possible outages out there if this ice does play out. And, obviously down here, in Myrtle Beach down towards Charleston, we don't have the equipment like you would in Charlotte, up in Asheville, up in Winston-Salem, Greensboro. So a little bit harder to get the roads cleared off and get things going down here than it is up in the Piedmont and the mountains of North Carolina, upstate South Carolina. So we're just kind of watching and seeing what that track is going to be. And we're hoping that this data that's being ingested from the Hurricane Center, Hurricane Hunters, it's really going to help us pinpoint who sees what here across the coast.
Yeah, it sounds like we could probably anticipate a snow ice map from you once we get that data in, maybe sometime Thursday. So anybody who's watching us on WBTW Plus can go, I guess, check your app, check your website. Tell us where can we find you guys?
Yeah, you can definitely WBTW on air, obviously channel 13, News 13. We'll be on the app as well, the Storm Tracker 13 app. Follow me on social media. I will definitely be updated. I'm off the next 2 days, but you guys know me pretty well that I don't really ever take off from the weather. So we'll be posting those updates as well. But stick with us. I know there's so many questions and not enough answers right now, but I think we're narrowing in on that. It's just going to be another day before we can kind of give the exacts.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to let you get to your newscast here. We're talking to you just shy of your 10 o'clock newscast on Wednesday, but we will keep in touch, sir.
Sounds good. You guys have a good night. Enjoyed talking with you all. Sorry I couldn't join earlier, but it's been pretty busy for all of us here. So good luck, and let's root for the snow route, even though it's not looking that way, because nobody likes ice.
Yeah. Snow good, ice bad. Thanks, Scotty.
See ya.
All right.
I want to know where Scotty got his jacket.
We'll have to ask him next week.
I want one of those.
Yeah, we'll have to ask him next week where he shops. We got lots of comments coming in. We'll try to get to some of those here. We're going to go to Tim Buckley coming up about 10 minutes past the 10 o'clock hour, which is about 10 or 15 minutes from now. But it's time for... There it goes. Columbia, South Carolina, and beyond. We are covered real well here on the Carolina Weather Group with the one and the only, the darling Frank Strait there in Columbia, South Carolina, with Stormy the Weather Cat here for support. Now, Frank is calling right now what we call pulling a Scotty, where he's talking while his mic is muted. So that means we get to put another cookie in the cookie jar. But
Stormy stepped on the on-off button. That's
probably. Can you find the button there, Frank? No. No. Okay, so I think what Frank is saying is no school, no work for at least a week. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what it is. He's trying to figure out where we're at on the mic.
Not muted on your end. Well, you're not muted on my end either. I see we're pulling your Yeti microphone in, so I don't know what's going on. I can switch to your Bose. Apparently, this is a power I have. This is live, in case anybody wasn't aware.
Yeah,
of the fact. You want me to go to Sam? Sam's here.
I'm here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's going to, that's a good idea.
Right,
he's going to jump out and jump back in. All right.
So, saying, I came back real fast. Sam, what's the situation out there on the Outer Banks? I'm asking you to speak for a large section of landmass. So maybe that's not fair, but how does this whole snow versus ice versus sleet versus freezing rain thing work out for you guys there when you're so close to the water?
Not good most of the time. Most of the time when we get these southern systems, we always look at it this way. If it snows in Atlanta, it'll snow here. It's got to snow in Atlanta for it to snow here. Now, that actually hasn't come true last year. We didn't really get that scenario with the two systems we had last year. But this one looks like more of the classic coastal low 50-mile track difference. We've talked about that. Everything has been talked about all this early week on that 50-mile track difference, making the difference between whether we get rain, all rain, we get a slush, we get sleet, or we get freezing rain. And now it looks like it's going to be a start with snow and then quickly turn to rain and be an all rain event. And maybe we even get into the 50s. And it seems that way. But as we've talked about earlier in the show, as Greg really hit it hard, that the GFS has really just not performed very well this week with this. And the Euro has it much better, but everything has now shifted north and west of us. So right now it looks like we are in the nearly all rain side of this for the entire time. And then on the backside, we're going to get the cold temperatures. So unfortunately for us on the Outer Banks, that's the scenario. Now, here's the difference. When we talk about the Outer Banks, we're talking about the beaches. You go west of the Sounds and you start getting into places like the mainland side of the Pamlico Albemarle Sounds. You start getting towards Greenville, those areas. And as we get closer to the I-95 corridor, things start to get much more interesting. And that's why we're right on the edge of those winter storm watches that are in place right now. It really does look like that eastern North Carolina, specifically northeastern North Carolina, is going to be kind of carved out in this. And when we look at so many historical snowfall total maps for North Carolina, so many times you've seen that carve out. That looks like what we're looking at right now. But again, 50 miles away, totally different story. If you start going even towards, like I said, the I-95 corridor is where it looks like the cutoff line is going to be for this right now. And that's, of course, been trending more west, trending more north over the last 24 hours. And maybe, as Scotty said a moment ago, we get this hurricane hunter data in here. Maybe we start getting a little bit more, I like to call it the windshield wiper effect when we're talking about hurricanes. The same thing happens here. Rain snow line does kind of windshield wiper back and forth as we get closer and closer. But man, it really it seems like we are going to be in the rain shield now.
Yeah, let me just tell people what they're seeing on the screen right now, Sam. So on this Wednesday night at 10 p.m., you're looking at the winter storm watches for all of those counties that are outlined there in blue. If you're listening to us, as Sam mentioned, in North Carolina, that's I-95 to the west. In South Carolina, it's essentially the I-85 corridor. You got to be like north of Columbia. Now, as Sam just mentioned, this could change as we go on through the rest of the week. And these are watches that at some point could become advisories or warnings. And we could also fill in some of these other counties depending on what the guidance is over the next couple of days, Sam.
And also note that, so for example, if you're headed out here to the Outer Banks and just east where it's all white out here in eastern North Carolina, that's the Wilmington, the Newport, and the Wakefield offices. And Newport made a good point because part of the coverage area for the Greenville TV stations is in blue right now. Part of the coverage area is not. That's because 48 hours is when we start issuing watches. And right now we are still outside the 48-hour window here in the far eastern parts of North Carolina and Virginia, which, if things are going to hold as they're looking right now, there's no watches or warnings in place in the areas that are probably going to see the highest amounts of snowfall in the mid-Atlantic, and that is from Richmond north into DC and out towards the Shenandoah Valley. So tomorrow that map is really going to fill in, and I've been having a lot of fun playing with this.
You have
over the last 48 hours.
For anybody that hasn't seen it yet, this is the first time I think we maybe showed it tonight. What is this?
This is the overall winter storm impacts. This is coming from the Weather Prediction Center, and there are various ways you can utilize this, and this is available to the public. If you go to the Weather Prediction Center website and click on it, and it's the WSSI, it's a great thing that you can use, that slider across the top. And there's a link in the comment section right now that James just put up because he's that smart. The colors all show the likelihood of winter weather. This is the overall winter storm impact. So that can be anything. That can be anything from snow to ice to sleet. It's kind of a generic term, and it's kind of been nice to have this available in the early going because we don't have snowfall total maps, guesstimates yet. We don't have watches and warnings. So these have been kind of nice to have in a pre-storm coverage mode. And as you can see, the deeper shades of red have now gone, where yesterday that deep shade of red and almost lava color was down in North Carolina and deep into South Carolina. And now today, looking ahead to Monday, it's all shifted much farther north, but that's not to say that those areas in red, those areas in yellow aren't going to see some type of impacts. But for us out here on the coast, you notice what you don't see anything on top of any part of the Outer Banks. So we're in the rain.
Yeah, I wanted to let people know that I have it on moderate right now. So moderate is defined as expect disruptions to daily life, hazardous driving conditions, use extra caution while driving, closures, and disruptions. Even if I switch it to major, you can see that we do still have a decent probability that portions of the Carolinas will have major impacts, which are defined as considerable disruption to life, avoid travel, widespread closures and disruption to infrastructure. And so this goes through Saturday night, Sunday, and then those cold temperatures that stick around for Monday and Tuesday. Sam, you mentioned the models, and we haven't shown them in about an hour, and I'm going to show them to everyone again right now. Frank showed them at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. This is the GFS, one of the American models. And just to kind of, again, show people the way it's setting up starting on Saturday night is we've got snow to the north, We got sleet and freezing rain in between, and then maybe some rain to the south and closer to the coast. And the big $1 million question is exactly where all of those colors, all those different precipitation types kind of line up. Where does the snow end? Where does it transition over to the ice? And you also mentioned that right now the hurricane hunters are flying a mission off the coast of California, because that on this Wednesday night that's where our storm is. It's
That's crazy, isn't it?
Off there, the California coast. So we got the hurricane hunters collecting data.
Yeah, that is crazy. It's crazy to think that, normally when we talk about these systems, it's something that's, a piece of energy that starts in the Gulf of Mexico and then makes its way up the Gulf Stream. This is a piece of energy that here on Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern time is sitting out off California, a couple of 100 miles off California.
Yeah.
And we're going to watch this thing go all the way across the country. And it's been crazy to watch the coverage nationally today and see the maps and how things are progressing all the way from the Rocky Mountains through the plains, through the Midwest, through the Deep South, all the way up the Mid-Atlantic into New England and even into the Canadian Maritimes as well with this one system. One thing I haven't mentioned, we're talking about hurricane hunters being out in storms. We're not going to see any coastal impacts from this at all. I've made sure with our friends at National Weather Service Newport on that we're not going to see any coastal impacts, because if you remember, if you've been with us before, if you've seen my coverage out here in the Outer Banks, we've been dealing with issues down on Hatteras Island and Cape Hatteras with houses falling in the ocean because of nor'easters and hurricanes in big waves. And this is the one fear we have and we've had going into the season is we're going to get one of these big winter storms and everybody else is going to get a foot of snow and we're going to get 70-mile-an-hour winds. Not happening with this system. It's moving too fast. It's a short time period where winds are going to be above gale force, 30-plus knots over the open waters. So we're not going to be dealing with any issues that we normally fear out of winter storms here on the Outer Banks.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about life out there in the Outer Banks briefly before we go over to Tim Buckley, because you guys have lots of experience with these coastal storms. You have lots of experience preparing to be on your own for a little bit. And if you do get any sort of icing, what becomes of the bridges? What becomes of the ferries? Do you guys go into that isolation mode?
A little bit. I will give credit to Division I and NCDOT. Division I is what we are part of here in the Northeast. They are pretty proactive in getting out on the roads and getting the de-icing or the brine out, the pickle brine, the Bojangles seasoning out on the roads, but they get the salt brine out there. I love the memes that have been popping up with that this week. But they've been pretty good getting pre-treatment out on the roads. Now, obviously, they get some criticism because, hey, it's going to rain. Where does it go? Well, no, when it rains, it actually activates it and helps it to spread out on the road. And then when we get the snow on top of that, it at least helps a little bit. But when it comes to ice and snow out here, everybody pretty much just, there you go. Yes, the Cajun spice spreader.
Not to derail, but there it is.
Perfect for the fries. Exactly.
This is Brad Panovich's X account. I assume that's Gemini.
It's beautiful. No, it is Gemini. I see the little star down there, but that's perfect. We are prepared for it. And in terms of, we're used to the isolation. When we get snow and ice out here on the beaches, it's fun to watch. Everybody wants to go ride their surfboards and ride their bodyboards or bring their snowboards out and not have to drive 5 hours to ride them and go ride down Wright Brothers National Memorial or Jockey's Ridge. I will say this, having been on the Outer Banks as my entire life and being out here to cover storms, snowstorms are the best because it is the quietest you've ever heard this place, even with the ocean warning. You're just hearing the ocean warning. The ferries, when it comes to trying to run the ferries, they are sensitive to wind. Anything above 30 knots, they've got to shut them down. So Ocracoke does get cut off for that. Ice can be an issue. The next couple of days after this, it will be a little bit of a treacherous for the ferries to run because think about it. They're metal. They're big metal plate decks. Metal and water when it's sub-freezing, do not mix.
Place you want to be.
That's not a place you want to be. The metal that's the loading docks. They can't run those because they're covered with ice. I have seen the Currituck Sound and ice over where you literally could walk out it. I've seen someone actually, well, it was shallow enough you could drive on it, but there are people who've driven out on it when it's frozen. Those are some of the things that happen here. But yeah, the ferries can't run because either the winds or you get ice out there. That is something else that comes into play. But there is something special about being on the Outer Banks when it snows. It looks pretty cool, and we kind of like it because it's probably the quietest it ever gets out here anymore this time of year. But I will say, I was in Elizabeth City earlier today. Wouldn't say there was panic buying going on so much, but there was a lot of snow shovels and a lot of salt being bought that made sense 24 hours ago that we were probably going to get 6-8 inches. And now everything looks like it's just going to be, we're going to be eating milk sandwiches all weekend.
Hey, it doesn't hurt to be prepared with all that milk sandwich.
It does not. It does not.
There's still lots of time. We're going to get to Tim Buckley in just a second. Sam, in addition to your work here at the Carolina Weather Group, you're going to be doing some radio hits. Where can people find you out there?
You can find it at 99.1 The Sound, WVOD, back on the air here on the Outer Banks. We will be on with updates top and bottom of the hour as conditions warrant. 991thesound.com. We're still getting things back on the streaming apps. A few of the streaming apps have us. A few of them don't yet. That's in work. Let's put it that way. Just go 991thesound.com. You'll find me there. And of course, you'll find me at samwalkerobxnews.com. I'll be doing updates throughout what's going on, but it looks like I'm not going to be that busy just talking about rain, at least if things, how they say, if the playoffs started today, even though they don't, that, it looks like we're in an all rain event out here for the most part.
Well, I wish everybody gets all rain because that will be the best case scenario.
Yeah.
But we know that most of us across elsewhere in the Carolinas are still in for a bit of a doozy. So, Sam, thank you for that update and perspective. And after tonight's show, viewers will see him, I think, again tomorrow at 11:15 Thursday when the governor of North Carolina comes out to talk about his state of emergency.
Yep, we will be here with that.
All right, fabulous. All right, let's go to Tim Buckley. Who's over there in Greensboro. Hang on, Tim. I got an open. I'm going to roll an open. Here it goes. Ready? Tim Buckley, chief meteorologist at WFMY, joins us. Just finished his little weather update there on WFMY Plus, and now he's here with us on the Carolina Weather Group to tell us what you expect to happen across the Triad with this big winter storm that's on its way.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go travel over to Sam, and we're going to have Mai Tais and hang out in the rain.
That sounds wonderful.
That's my plan. But no, it's looking pretty ugly around here. And James, we've talked throughout the last couple of days, of course. There's a lot of areas of concern, and specifically for us, we're more worried about ice than snow. A couple of days ago, like everybody else, it looked like a whole lot of snowfall, but you do this a while, you live in the Carolinas a while, you kind of speak weather model after a couple of years, when there can be mirages. And so maybe not jumping on those trains of it's a snowstorm or it's an ice storm. And we kind of have been saying it's a winter storm, and we still need to break down the different aspects of those precipitation types. And I think that's been the right approach so far, because we're learning more now that it's probably going to be pretty minimal on the snow side. The trends over the last couple of days, as y'all have probably talked already about, it's going to be a slower moving arrival to the storm for the precipitation. But what's not slow on arrival is the arrival of the warm air above our heads. And we call this the warm nose. You can call it whatever you like. But what it really is a little ribbon of above 32-degree air up between the clouds and the ground. And that's not great, because what it does is it melts a snowflake. And once you melt a snowflake, you can never really get it back. And so at that point, you have two options. It can either fall to the ground and freeze on contact. That's freezing rain, which we are expecting to have some of, and maybe a lot of. I'm still not quite sure how much of that we're going to have. Because the other option is that you can refreeze it into a sleet pellet. And the temperatures here are going to be so cold, upper teens, low 20s, that it might just be cold enough that we get a whole lot of sleet and not quite as much rain or freezing rain. So those are all options that I still see as on the table. But kind of what we're advising people is, the storm's coming. There are still people asking, is it going to miss us? There's no way it's going to miss us. Even if you don't get snow, ice is still bad. It's funny because we for a while have kind of considered us, if you look back climatologically, we've kind of considered our part of the state and our part of the eastern US as a bit of an ice storm capital or a freezing rain capital. It's been a long time since we've had a big one. And so that's out of a lot of people's memory, particularly if you've moved into the area within the last 10 years. So I think it's hard for folks to realize that ice does happen here. And when it does, it can be really bad. And so there's probably a lot of trees that haven't been tested by weighing down of ice as well. So there really could be a big impact. Either way, it's going to be a big impact. If there's more sleet, it'll be more of a big impact on the roads. If it's more ice, it's going to be more of an impact to the power grid. And so bottom line, your message here is, if you live in the Piedmont, you live in the Triad area, or anywhere between Raleigh, Charlotte, you should be preparing to stay home for a couple of days, or at least be maybe stuck for a couple of days. You should also know that that might be the case with no power. And so you're thinking about what to do, how to stay warm if you lose power, because next week, what we'll start to talk about once we get through the storm, but we need to mention it before the storm because that's when you can actually get out and get supplies. You should have a way to keep yourself warm, or at least a little warm, because we could be down around 10 degrees early next week, the temperature. So that's not good, particularly if you have no heat in your house and you don't have any second sources. You're gonna have to get creative on how to kind of stay warm out there. So I'm expecting to have a tough couple of days, Saturday into next week, and it might really take a while before things clear up. We'll have sunshine, but it's cold sunshine, and it's January sunshine as well.
On WFNY Plus the other day, you guaranteed no school for a week. Are you still guaranteeing no school for a week, or?
I don't think I signed off in writing, but I will tell you this: I've seen this. I've seen no school for a week for a lot less. Yeah. And you know, just for folks that might not live here, you might not get a lot of winter weather in your part of the Carolinas. The policy for a lot of the districts here is if there are icy roads within the county, the county closes. It's not half, quarter, this, that, or that. It's the county. And we got some big counties, and I assure you we're going to have a lot of icy roads out there that don't melt super easily.
Sam Walker on the Outer Banks has a question for you, and it's probably not what is your favorite Mai Tai.
We got Orange Crush out here. That's what we'll go with.
Okay,
Orange
nice.
Crush. Now, of course, your coverage area does include a lot of Southside Virginia. Yeah. And you know, we start going into that part of the Commonwealth. It does start to get a very interesting and looking at some of the stuff, at least the coverage out here. Since we're in the Norfolk TV market, we're hearing a lot of that stuff. But it does look like that, you know, you start getting into Martinsville, Danville, on up the 29 corridor, things really start to get very, I don't want to say crazy, but kind of crazy up there.
It does. And, you know, Sam, the couple of days ago, it really looked like Virginia would be in this huge bullseye of very heavy snowfall. And that still could be the case, but it might be farther north than south side at this point. This warm nose is kind of creeping north for everybody. It still depends on which model you want to trust. I can show you, you know, you can pick and choose your fighter here. But it does seem like the trend overall, especially as we're getting more data, is that warm air aloft is creeping more and more north. So even those areas, while you might get a better thump of snow at the initial part, you still could finish up with some sleet. And so that's gonna cut into some totals. Now I saw Blacksburg, Virginia, they put out their winter storm watch. They said 8 to 14 inches for most of the area.
Wow.
But I'm pretty sure they're going to refine that and kind of localize it a little bit more. I don't expect that for the North Carolina border specifically, but
that's a cheat code that Tim just gave. If you are looking for a snowfall accumulation, it's inside the winter storm watch for your area right now.
That's right.
But Tim, when are you going to put out your first map?
Yeah, I'm kind of doing a little rough draft here tonight, just to see how I think about it or how it feels, but I'll sleep on it and then I'll probably put it out sometime tomorrow.
Okay. So we'll look, where can we find that tomorrow, which will be Thursday for anybody who's rewatching this later?
Well, on WFMY Plus and WCNC Plus, of course.
Yeah, there's a great show at 6:30.
James is apart from that, of course, you know, if you're in the Triad area, you can find us on TV. If you don't have cable, that's okay. Literally, you probably have a TV that has Roku on it, Fire, on it, maybe Apple Stick, whatever you use, you can search for WFMY Plus. You can plop it on there. We're also doing weather cut-ins on the hour until the end of the storm. So we are going to be with you, maybe more than you would like.
These people here, I think you're safe. They'll take all the Tim Buckley they can get.
Yeah,
so hopefully,
we're going to be there.
Hopefully people check you out there, WFMY, and people stay tuned for the rest of our whole show as we continue our round robin. Thank you, Tim, for your time tonight. Thank you, everyone there at WFMY. Stay safe. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. All right. Let's see if Frank Strait can hear us there in Columbia, or really if we can hear him.
No.
It says on my screen the guest has muted themselves. Are you muted in Restream? I hear it clicking. It's clicking on and off.
Yeah.
You want to just try a different mic, even if it sounds worse?
I mean, powered down the mic. He's powered it back up.
Yeah. Well, let's show you full screen here, ladies and gentlemen. This is Frank Strait. Now, this is a radio professional.
Yes,
troubleshooting his microphone. If anyone can figure it out, it will be Frank.
Let's try unplugging it and plugging it back in. Did that fix it?
It didn't fix the microphone because I think you were getting like your internal laptop mic or something. But we can hear you. And
no, you can hear you fine now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's a different mic now.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll roll with it. It's fine.
Folks, if you really want to see what radio people do when things like this happen, we can't put that on TV.
No. You have to subscribe to our Patreon for that.
You would have to subscribe to the Patreon for that if you really want to see how radio people act when things
doesn't even
right.
see my microphone now, so I guess I'll just throw it away.
There you go. Yeah,
there you
exactly.
Go. Whatever. Make a difference. Okay, I gotta give Frank credit because Frank's been anxiously, patiently waiting in the wings as we were prioritizing all of our guests. So let's roll the Columbia Open once again, and let's go down to Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina, as a look at what the impacts are going to be in South Carolina for this big winter storm, Frank.
Yeah, well, I saw we had a comment a few minutes ago from Helene in Swansea, South Carolina. Wants to know how things are going to shake out down here. Well, Helene, you're a neighbor of mine. You live within 3 miles of me if you're in Swansea. I'm close to Gaston, so we're right next door to each other. As for what's going to happen, no.
All right, well, that's the show. Thanks for joining us. Right.
No, to be more realistic here, the models have really jumped around some over the last couple of days and have trended warmer, which is probably a good thing because it looked like we had the potential for a pretty seriously damaging ice storm in the Midlands of South Carolina, the Central Savannah River area. Northern PD region. Thanks to the warmer trend in the model, it looks like that's going to happen. It's going to be somewhere north of here. And instead, we end up maybe with some sleet for a little while. Then it goes over to freezing rain and probably to just plain rain as it warms up on Saturday or Sunday, rather, if you believe the models. Potential still there for some ice buildup along I-20, and it certainly isn't over yet with the new and better data going into the models, thanks to the hurricane hunters flying off the California coast through that storm that will be affecting us this weekend. Maybe things change again and it ends up turning colder, but or the forecast turns colder again. But I don't think that's likely at this point. The models are. It's not just the Euro. The Canadians doing it, UK Met's doing it. Maybe some other models are doing it too. They're really flooding the zone across the coastal plain and adjacent areas in the Carolinas with warm air, especially in South Carolina. So right now, the GFS still looks pretty cold and could still would still indicate a good bit of ice accumulating in the Midlands of South Carolina. But I'm not inclined to believe it's a 2014 like event anymore. If something like that's going to happen, it would be north of here. So right now I'm thinking for the Columbia area, we see precipitation getting underway late Saturday, likely as some sleet. Maybe there's a few little snowflakes mixed in for the first 15 minutes or so, but don't get excited. It probably won't snow at all. And if it did, it wouldn't last very long. Then we get sleet for a while, eventually goes over to freezing rain Saturday night. Maybe there's enough sleet to cover the ground. Probably not, but maybe. And then we get some ice build up into Saturday, or rather Sunday morning, and then temperatures probably end up warming up above freezing. Then behind the storm, it gets colder again. The storm goes into Sunday night. Maybe it drops below freezing again Sunday night. Maybe we actually see a few wet snowflakes at the end of this thing. Some of the models are kind of hinting at that as colder air rushes in behind our departing storm. But I wouldn't get excited about that either. And then we're real cold Monday into Tuesday, possibly even down in the teens Tuesday morning in this part of the country. After that, well, we have other weather systems affecting us potentially around the middle of next week and late next week. I'll make some more comments on that in a few minutes.
I was like,
when we
don't
get
get me started about
when
that.
we get to the too many tabs section. I'll talk about that.
Oh, we're doing that? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm going to make you do too many tabs.
Oh, man. Well, I do have a tab
right.
that I'm going to show on the screen right now because I think it helps speak to what you were talking about. And this is one of the 3 scenarios that Brad Panovich put on X earlier. It's the track number 3, and it shows that snow, ice mix, rain, and it kind of brings the rain as far north as Columbia. It brings ice through Charlotte and then pushes the snow into Virginia, as we were just talking to Tim Buckley about. And, a lot of the messaging over the start of this week has been, well, it's either going to be this or it's going to, slide a little bit further south so that maybe Columbia gets a little bit more ice and Charlotte gets still ice, but the snow starts retreating from Virginia more in northern portions of North Carolina, or this other track where, the snow comes even further south. But in all 3 of these scenarios, a lot of North Carolina is getting all winter weather. Upstate South Carolina is getting all winter weather. But I think what I hear you saying tonight, Frank, is that the trend today on this Wednesday has been that this whole dividing line has moved a little bit further north.
Yeah, that's the way it looks, especially down here in South Carolina. Or at least in the Midlands and along the coast, the potential impacts, the ceiling anyway, has gotten a lot lower. However, that may not be true for the upstate, and we probably should talk about upstate South Carolina for a little while.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, we've got a YouTube comment that says South Carolina is just getting all cold rain, sorry. And while that might be true for a lot of us, I don't think we should say all of South Carolina. There are places that are still going to get hit by this.
No, we're still concerned about some pretty serious impacts for upstate South Carolina. It's a lot like in Charlotte. We talk about it all the time that we think that the highway planners of the 1950s decided that hey, let's build this highway that we're going to call I-85. Let's build it right along the area that's usually a dividing line during weather events, because that happens so often. And it looks like that's potentially the case as well. But in this case, it's not snow versus rain or snow versus ice. And in this case, it looks like it's freezing rain versus sleet. Yeah. Right now, it's looking like, sure, there'll be some sleet south of I-85 for a time. And again, maybe like in Columbia, maybe it's enough to cover the ground, better chance of that in the southern part of the upstate over toward the Rock Hill area than down here in Columbia. But once you get north of 85, that's where that near surface cold air layer starts to get thick enough and cold enough that you might get a lot of sleet instead. That's probably especially true once you get into the foothills up Mom and Dad's Way in Polk County and over toward Rutherford and up to Hickory. Those areas that the cold air tends to get locked in pretty good there at the low levels, no matter how much it warms up aloft. So in the upstate South Carolina area, if you're not getting sleet and you end up getting freezing rain, it could be a really bad ice storm in that area, because it looks like we're going to put down well over an inch of liquid, maybe an inch and a half to 2 inches of liquid. Some of that certainly would be sleet, but if you end up with an inch, more than an inch of precipitation falling as freezing rain, at least a half of that, I think, would end up being what accretes on trees and power lines. And half-inch ice, no good. We don't want that, especially if it's more than that. There is some risk for that too. So we're going to have to watch the upstate very carefully. And again, I hope that, like with areas around Charlotte over toward Raleigh, that we end up getting enough sleet to kind of bail us out of this situation, and we don't end up with serious impacts. And just like our WLOS guy, his name just escaped me.
Jason
Boyer. That's right.
It's been a long 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's been a long show. Anyway, just like he mentioned is the case for Western North Carolina, upstate South Carolina's in the same boat with Helene having weakened trees.
Yeah.
So there's going to be concern for more trees coming down here. And because they were in a weakened state, because after Helene may not have been able to recover yet. So That's going to be another worry too, is that maybe we bring down more trees than we ordinarily would during an ice storm. So again, let's hope and pray for that sleet if you're in upstate South Carolina, and the foothills of North Carolina too as well.
Let me ask you this, Frank, because we have it on the screen right now. All four P-types here: rain, freezing rain.
Right, and
sleet,
I wanted to interject when Tim Buckley was talking about the two options. That one's sleet because there's a deep enough cold air layer there for the melted raindrops to refreeze. Then the other option, freezing air. There actually is that third option there, where it's above freezing at the surface, just plain rain, which happens 94% of the time probably in the Carolinas.
I think for Tim, plain rain's not on the table. But
yeah, that's not on the table for Tim in this particular situation.
What's the difference between freezing rain and sleet?
Well, freezing rain is where you have the snowflakes form aloft, and then they reach that warm layer and melt into raindrops, and they reach the raindrops at the surface. However, temperatures are below freezing again at the surface because the cold air near the surface isn't deep enough to give those melted snowflakes, raindrops, a chance to refreeze again. So you end up with rain falling, but it's below freezing, so that raindrop lands on something, and some or all of that water in that raindrop freezes on contact. As a result, you end up with ice buildup. Sleet, on the other hand, sleet on the other hand is where that warm layer is, or the cold layer near the ground is thick enough that the frozen snowflakes, raindrops that fall into it have time to freeze up, or maybe that layer near the surface, the cold, it's just really cold, and you can end up with those raindrops refreezing into sleet that way too. But the bottom line is, you have, instead of snowflakes or raindrops hitting you as you're walking outside, you have ice pellets hitting you in the face, and they sting a little bit.
They do sting, but at least you know it's ice, where the freezing rain looks like rain and can be real sneaky by accumulating that ice on the ground.
I want to throw another factor in here. We haven't talked about this.
Okay.
Wind. Are we possibly, because if you look at your 5-day, your 7-day forecast from the National Weather Service, you only see 3 days out as far as winds go. And of course, winds, when we talk about winds, we're always concerned about what the wind's doing out here on the Outer Banks, because obviously we're on the edge of the ocean, and wind is a constant with us, especially when it comes to storm systems. You get an ice storm and you throw in wind, you got a whole nother thing, whole nother issue. Have we even looked at what winds are going to do with this system, or is that not something that we really need to be worried about?
Yes, and while we have the sleet, freezing rain, maybe some snow falling, the wind isn't going to be an issue. However, after the storm moves out and that fresh Arctic air mass moves in, the wind is going to pick up with that. So we're going to be blowing the trees and power lines around a little bit when they're already weighted down with ice in a lot of places. So the Western Carolinas in general, that's going to be a concern Sunday night or later Sunday night into Monday. The wind is going to pick up outside the mountains. The wind's probably gusting to the 25 to 30 mile an hour range. Just adds a little bit more stress. Of course, it also will knock some of the ice off the trees and power lines. So in some ways it's a good thing, but until it does manage to knock the ice off the trees and power lines somewhat, they're going to be weighted down and getting stressed a little further by the wind. Now, that's outside the mountains. In the mountains, it's worse. Your winds are going to be gusting 40 to 45, higher ground, maybe 50 miles an hour. And that's going to be a problem if you have considerable ice buildup and having that much wind on top of it. That's going to exacerbate the situation with the potential for power outages.
Yeah, search galloping power lines. You will see some pretty impressive stuff if you search galloping power lines.
I'm surprised we made it 90 minutes before somebody said galloping power lines. Because it only takes, we should have said this 90 minutes ago. It only takes a quarter inch of ice to cause problems with power lines.
Right.
And so when we are talking about ice amounts that are greater than that, that is our concern, especially with ice forming and temperatures staying below freezing for days on end. That's where the concern for power outages come. Brian, who's watching on YouTube tonight, says, any concerns with grid capacity as the cold temps arrive next week? I don't know where Brian's watching from, but if he's from Charlotte, I'm thinking back to that Christmas Eve where temperatures got so cold that we had a capacity problem, and it wasn't even a storm. It was just cold temps. So I'd have to speculate that the answer to Brian's question is probably yes.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that because not only are we getting an ice storm that's going to be really cold, I mean, the entire eastern part of the country is going to be real cold.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a general high demand for power, and it may be a general thing grid wide that it may be a struggle to keep up with demand.
We had another comment from Sunny on YouTube. The sun is at solar minimum right now. And, that's a really good point in winter because I've got some solar panels, right? But I'm going to have to combat the low sun on the horizon this time of year versus, say, in the summer when it would be right overhead.
That's something worth mentioning. If you are someone who has solar panels, especially if you're relying on them in power outages because you have battery backups as well, you're going to need to think about ways to maybe clean those solar panels off in the wake of the storm so
safely.
that when the sun does pop out again, that you can actually generate some power, because you may not be able to get it from the grid because there may be down power lines or something in your neighborhood or between you and the power plant.
Nikki on YouTube asks, do you think the Hurricane Hunter data will make it? Let me try that again. Nikki on YouTube asks, do you think the Hurricane Hunter data will change the model runs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
about all we can say, but yes, it will make them hopefully better. Hopefully.
That is kind of the summary tonight. That's kind of the linchpin tonight on this Wednesday, right? Like everyone seems to be waiting for that model data to come in because before we can figure out where the storm is going to go, we need to really truly understand where it is now and how strong it is as it forms this Wednesday night off California.
Right. So that's one of my too many tabs.
Oh, okay. Here he goes. All right, we're going to squeeze in a few tabs here from Frank's screen. I don't have a screen share from you just yet, but I do have a New Year's resolution.
Oh, that's right. I had to
show before Frank has a chance to do his tabs because I kept cutting him off last year, and we're not going to do that here in 2026. So
there we go.
What do you got here on the screen for us, Frank?
Okay, well, there's Brad's post about the Hurricane Hunters flying around out there, showing the route that they're taking through that storm. That's from a while back when it was centered more west of the California or the San Francisco Bay Area. It's moved a little bit southeastward since then, but that shows the track that the Hurricane Hunters were taking and measuring some pretty good winds. Some purples there for hurricane force winds. Of course, that's its flight level, and I'm not sure what their flight level is for that recon mission, but they're finding some strong winds out there. So it's a vigorous storm system. All right, next tab. Evan Fisher, our good friend, with a picture of his local Walmart with very little bread on the shelves. I don't see any bread. I see some English muffins. Does that count as bread?
Yeah,
it's a bread product.
But there's not much else.
Yeah, milk sandwiches for everybody.
Yes, milk sandwiches. Which now I forgot. I need to put a link post a link into the chat here about a grilled milk sandwich video that I found on YouTube.
Oh,
yeah, Doug, I don't need that.
I can't wait. I can't wait. We will have to share
that. Okay, the other tab. Forget the grocery store, says Jeff Crum. How's total wine faring? So that's important to remember. Stock up on the things that you really want when you're snowed in or iced in, along with the things that you need.
I saw the same question elsewhere earlier today.
Need some help coping.
and remember, there is a state of emergency, but that does not mean the liquor store and the wine can't be sold. That's just a whole government thing. They haven't shut alcohol sales off. That's number one question when we get a state of emergency out here.
Exactly. Finally, my last two mini tabs. They're taking a look at the teleconnections for some ideas to what might happen behind the storm. There's the North Atlantic Oscillation, a measure of blocking over the Atlantic. Looks like it's going to stay negative for a while, y'all. Now for the P&A, a measure of, there's actually 4 different areas you watch with the P&A, but the important ones for us is that when the P&A goes positive, as it looks like it will, right behind our storm, that means you get a big ridge over the western part of the country and usually a good trough over the southeast. So we're going to stay in this negative NAO and go to a positive P&A pattern. In addition to that, negative Arctic oscillation. That usually means the jet stream is shifted further south into the mid latitudes. EPO, when that's negative, you tend, as it looks like it will be for a while, you have a ridge over Alaska. WPO, a ridge farther west. It contributes to cross-polar flow. So we have a lot of cold signals for a while, y'all, and potentially stormy signals as well. Behind this storm, winter is not over.
That was a lot of letters, but I think the TLDR was it's going to be cold.
Yep.
It's going to be cold, and we might have more winter storm risks.
Yeah. I have only one tab, and it comes from Ethan Clark, and I think it summarizes the entire show. Ethan Clark in Raleigh posted, it helps if I put my screen share on. They are literally escorting salt trucks with police cars in Raleigh if you want to know how NC is prepared. NC.
Video if not had.
Yes.
Video or didn't happen, but no, that's about right.
So, Frank, was that all your tabs?
Yes, that was all my tabs.
Okay,
I'm just sitting here holding my tongue because I'm trying not to make a political comment that will make everybody mad.
Yeah,
I'm not going to make a political comment
keep
at all
holding
either
the
way
tongue.
because everyone will get mad and no one will ever watch Carolina Weather Group.
Right.
Well, that is,
it won't matter what side of the aisle you're on. You'll get mad about what I was going to say.
At least it would be universally
bad.
bad. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap us up on that note. So thanks to everybody for watching tonight. Stay subscribed, especially to our audio podcast, because if we do have power outages, we will be dropping audio updates on our Carolina Weather Group audio podcast feed so that if you have limited connectivity, limited power, you can listen to us as we continue to post updates. We will be back on Thursday with the North Carolina Governor Josh Stein's first weather briefing related to this storm. It's at 11:15. I think Mr. Sam Walker is going to hold down the fort for that one. And then we will be back with updates on YouTube and the like as this storm progresses, or at least as long as I can keep the lights on here. But that's why we've got folks spread all around the Carolinas so we can keep an eye on this and stay together. Jay says the best hour plus I've spent. So thank you, Jay. We appreciate that very, very much. And we hope everyone stays safe. There is still some fluidity to all of this, but whether you're watching on Wednesday or on Thursday or on Friday, you've got time to prepare before this starts on Saturday. So we will get more specifics coming your way over that time frame. But think about what you and your family, your neighbors, and your community need: food, bread, milk, medicines, pet supplies, and ways to safely stay warm. So thanks to all of our guests who joined tonight for this very extended, very long, very thorough edition of the Carolina Weather Group. We will talk to you again real soon. Until then, be well. Have a good night.